All right, here we go. I'm excited to share this real-time footing pour with you. We've taken the time to uncover all of the footing so that we don't have to stop pumping. And also, Joe is kicking some dirt around the underside of the form boards where there's a gap. Sometimes, most of the time, the excavation is not perfect. So when we lift the boards, there's a gap underneath the boards. So to mitigate losing concrete, we just use either some dirt, some plastic. I've seen guys use wire mesh to stop that concrete from flowing out. In concrete, you want to try and conserve as much materials as you can because they are one of the most expensive components of the project. So you can see the pump is moving into position here. He is primed off to the side already, so that's when the pump puts a little bit of concrete into their hopper, and on top of in this case they use a slick rick, I believe it's called, or some pumps use bentonite. So that allows the concrete to lubricate the lines. And Mike has started pouring concrete here in the corner. When we start pumping, we like to not have to turn the pump off if at all possible, just because we like to get as much production out of this as we can. So we like to be as prepared as we can be. So here you'll see Mike is going to pick his direction that he's going to go with. After he gets some concrete into the footings, you have a rake guy that follows behind him, just quickly raking off the top. So if he's putting too much or too little, you can communicate with the guy on the pump to either put a little bit less or a little bit more. So I would be speaking directly to Mike, and the pump operator, who you see up on the bank, Redneck, he is also watching what we're doing because he's the one that's actually controlling the pump. Mike is controlling the placement of the concrete, and he's asking me, how am I doing? Am I too high? Am I too low? And at this point he was too high, so I was just quickly trying to rake that out and to try and get it good so that Joe doesn't have to work too hard in behind me actually screeding off the top of the footing. So here you can see the pump. These machines are absolutely incredible. I'm not sure what their actual flow rate is, other than I can say with Redneck here, I know we can pump off a 9-meter truck in 10-11 minutes into our walls, or into a hole or whatever it is. I'm sure some pump operators would know a lot more about it than I do. But as you can see, I'm starting to catch back up to Mike here. Now, if you're thinking of doing this on your own, I would highly advise you to only allow as much concrete into the footing as what you believe that you can personally handle. We're professionals, as one of my old bosses used to say. You're a professional as soon as you cash the first check. So being a professional, we like to just hammer down and get as much into there as possible. Also, we are fighting against the elements here, so we want to try and get this concrete in, raked, screeded as quickly as possible. But if you're an amateur, put down as much as you can handle. The pump operators and the concrete truck, they don't, they're getting paid by the hour. So if they have to be turned on, turned off, doesn't matter to you. You're paying a 4-hour minimum for these people most of the time anyway. But often, we want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. So here you can see how this goes with Mike putting in the concrete. Then I'm raking it out, and you have Joe way back in the background there, still giving it more of a final grade with just a simple 2x, which he is putting on top of the 2 form boards that make up the footing, and he's just jittering that back and forth and screeding off the top there. So here you can see me using a couple of different methods. We call that one the shake, and where we're just shaking the top of the concrete with the rake or whatever you have. Sometimes we use concrete placers, which is an aluminum rake that doesn't have the teeth, and it's just more of a flat blade. Those are really nice for doing slabs or what have you. But we just use whatever is in the back of the truck and fastest to get out. So as you can see, it doesn't take us very long to get through here, as we're just more than halfway done this footing now, and it's only been 5 or 6 minutes. The part that takes the longest is getting that fine finish. You want to make sure that when you're taking the time to level out your form boards to a 1/16 of an inch, that you finish the concrete to the same spec. Often what happens is the concrete acts as a liquid, and a liquid has the ability to form what they call a meniscus, which is when the volume of the liquid is higher than the volume of the container. So even though you're going by with this 2x4, whatever you end up using to screed it off with, it can sometimes still be higher than the form board. So you'll see after we finish going around with just the common screed, I'll go back around and fine tune it with a hand trowel as well. So you can see Joe is taking some concrete from where he had too much and putting it where he has too little. Even though we are working very closely together, Mike and I, it's still, you're going to end up having a low spot or a high spot, and Joe is just going to deal with that as that comes up. So most of the time you're trying to keep it high enough that he doesn't have to stop doing what he's doing. Not sure why he's down on his knees. Some guys like bending over. Some guys don't mind getting right down and dirty there. But basically, none of us are perfect, and we have to make sure that we're just doing the best job we can, because when it comes time to putting the forms on, we want to make sure we don't have any high spots or low spots. Having a low spot, if it's an 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, whatever, that's not a big deal. It's the high spots that really affect you when you are placing your forms, especially if your top of wall is super critical. You don't want to have to make a 1/4 inch T-block to bring down the height of your foundation, because you want to get your full 4 feet out of it, and you want to be able to hit your grade where you're supposed to hit that grade. Just a few moments ago, you may have heard the concrete truck honking his horn. That was a signal to the pump driver that he is out of concrete. And as you can see, we still have about another 10 feet or so to go. We're struggling around these heat duct lines here, so I'm going to end up disconnecting that eventually. But for right now, I'll just continue struggling with it as I'm raking this out. So now what the pump driver is doing is he is actually going to his hopper where the concrete is put into by the concrete truck. So you have many men working together here, all as a team, so that we get a good result. So what the pump driver is doing is closing his hopper. As the concrete gets lower in the hopper, the pistons and the auger and all that stuff back there will it starts sucking air, and concrete starts splashing up everywhere, and we don't want to get his truck dirty. We don't want to get the concrete truck dirty. We don't want to get concrete on anyone. So he closes that lid. What that allows us to do is it allows us to pump that hopper right down, and we need another 6 or so feet here. So that's what we did. So on this project here, I added 10% waste for material irregularity. So hopefully the concrete plant is within 10%, and hopefully the ground is within 10%. Then I always add 1 meter for the pump. So I also didn't calculate this footing for the dimensions that they had requested the footing be. What I like to do is always go around after we've leveled everything out. I take some measurements in the highest spot, in the lowest spot, and I average those two numbers out. So our lowest area here was 6 inches, and our highest area was about 9 inches. So I just add those two numbers together, divide that by 2, and I use that as my average depth for the footing. You can get very accurate with this, and I'll show you once we get into doing footings on bedrock. I'll show you how to do that average depth as well. These are all things that were freely taught to me. Well, I guess I had to pay the people to teach me about all of these different things, and we picked things up through experience. But you could get very accurate and take a measurement every single foot, add up all of those measurements, and then eventually you're going to have a very accurate understanding of what your grade truly is. So for this, I averaged it out to be about 8 inches, and the footing was 20 inches wide, and we had, obviously it's a 50 by 30, so we just take that 160 linear feet, multiply it by our 8 inches, multiply that by our 20 inches, and then that gives us a cubic measurement, which we convert into meters, because here in Canada we use two forms of measurement back to back, it seems. So we're using feet and inches, and then we order the concrete in meters. So whatever that cubic number is that it spits out, I multiply that by 1.1, which adds 10%. Then I add 1 cubic meter for the pump. And as you can see, we were pretty tight on concrete here, which makes me feel good, because when I'm not wasting too much material, it makes, more profits. I'm being a green company, if you will, and it's, I don't like wasting material. I don't want to waste the client's money, and I don't want to pay more for concrete just to have it on there. However, there are times when you're going to want to have more concrete than you need. That is when it's a Friday, last pour of the day, you want to make sure you have enough concrete. When you run short on concrete and you definitely can't pump any more out of the pump truck, and you still need more, that's what we call a balance. You don't want to have to call the ready mix and ask for a balance, especially when maybe it all would have fit on one truck. That's very embarrassing, and also it costs more fuel, more time, more money. You're paying $200 an hour for the pump truck. You're paying $100 or $200 an hour in labor, and you have the client standing there watching you do it. So you don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to be short, especially this time of year where the concrete is not necessarily going to be setting up too quickly, which it could, because we have an admixture in this. But also, if you're in a situation where you can't tarp it to heat it, the concrete could be going too cold, and that chemical reaction could be stalling. So you'll see us here, we're just quickly going around, finishing raking out and screeding out. The rest of this we took over for Joe there, and now Joe's able to get back on his 2 feet and start cleaning up around the forming stakes. Any concrete that splooges out under the boards, we like to clean that away from the forming stakes. It looks like he needs a little bit more in the footing here, so he's doing 2 birds, 1 stone. And I'm just grabbing material for Mike there so that he has enough in the footing to screed that out so that we're not too low. You don't want your forms to sag down. With other forms, they can make up for a lot of material irregularity. The advanced panels, Duraform panels, wooden panels, or 1 1/8 panels, those can really take up a lot of that material or the footing irregularity, so you don't have to be as exact. We probably also don't have to be as exact, but we like to try and get things very accurately done, so that at the end of the day, when someone comes to take a look at it, they can see that we take pride in it, most of the work that we get is through referral work, not through advertisement. And I'd like to believe that even though this footing will be buried and no one will see it, that once the excavator sees it, once the carpenters see it, that they will recommend us based on the care that we take for things that are unseen. And that's one of the really big parts of life, that you have to be of such high integrity that even when you are having your things buried or unseen, that you're doing it to a good quality, to a good standard. These people are paying good money for this. We don't need to, just because no one's ever going to see it again, we don't need to do a poor job at doing it. If you're going to do something, like my mother always used to say, don't do it half-ass, do it well. You can see that I'm grabbing some of the concrete that the pump truck had dumped onto the bank here. Although it's didn't make its way into the footing, it didn't go bad just because it's up on the bank there. You have to be careful with doing this. You don't want to scrape up any of the soil. You don't want to get any soil in there, although where we are, code compliance allows us to have 1.5% deleterious materials in there. But with how much concrete was put there, I can easily scrape out just pure concrete. It will have lost some of its heat, but we're putting it right back into the footing. Like I said, this has got a Rate C Excelgard in it by Euclid, and it's a tried and tested chemical that really reacts with the heat to get us a good quality product. I could have put calcium into this footing. There's no rebar in here, so I could have used calcium, but I personally don't like using calcium because I find it can be very unpredictable. And by unpredictable, I mean it can go off very quickly, and by go off, I mean go hard. And I find when you use calcium, it actually doesn't cream up very well. So, here where it's a footing, we definitely probably could have handled it, and I am just thinking about this now that I could have saved a little bit of money. But the Excelgard, I feel, is a slightly better product, especially when you have rebar in the walls. Some people have low to no integrity, so they're willing to put calcium in walls or floors that have metal. What has been shown that happens is that the calcium over time eats the metal and destroys that metal. So please don't do that. Eventually that thing will fail. Yes, the check will probably clear, it might look quite good visually, but over time it will deteriorate and that client will lose all of their investment. Now that we're done screeding everything off, you can see Joe's going all the way around the footing, cleaning all the concrete away from every single pin on the inside and outside. This allows us to strip much faster, to bend less pins, so we're just protecting that investment. I've gone and grabbed a hand trowel, and now I'm going to hand trowel and give more of a final finish to the top of the footing here. As I'm doing this, beside the spreaders, the concrete tends to build up in high spots there. So I'm just going to clean that concrete away from either side of the spreader and from out of the spreader, and then I'm going to trowel the top of the footing to give us a nice smoother surface to do our layout on Monday. So I will be taking footage of that as well, so that you can see what we're doing. So until I make it down to this other side here, you won't be able to really see what I'm doing with the hand trowel, but it won't take me very long to get there. So Joe's gone around and he's just still cleaning all the concrete away from these pins. The way that I've structured my concrete company is to be very eco-friendly, if you will. Although concrete is the most petroleum intensive, energy intensive industry that's on the planet. I'd like to try and conserve as much of that as I can. So we're reusing all of our forming stakes, we're reusing all of our screws, we're reusing all of our form boards, because I think that's the way to get better profitability, as well as getting, just not having to rush to the hardware store and making more products all of the time. Why not just reuse a lot of these things instead of always purchasing, new stakes, or some places they're able to use pickets, they're able to use forming wooden stakes, but here the ground just doesn't allow for it. It's just not really even possible for us unless you're using, different methods. We've found that using these circular forming stakes is the way that is best for our conditions, for our soil types. As you can see there's lots of rocks here. This is really hard soil, and you just would not be able to pound a wooden stake into this ground. It would be discouraging, and no one would enjoy that. So we just keep all of these forming stakes in the back of the van, and we reuse them every time. We re-drill out the holes if we have to. If a screw breaks in there, whenever we're slow, we just re-drill out all of those holes. So as you can see here, now Mike is coming behind me, following behind me here, and I'm cleaning out the concrete from the spreader, and Mike is putting in a keyway that the bottom of the wall will connect into. So this is an old school way of connecting the wall to the footing. It is a code requirement here where we are, that you fasten the bottom of the wall either with rebar or you fasten it with a keyway. So let me know down in the comments below if you think we're putting the keyway in properly. Mike's just doing it with a 2x4 and cutting that edge in after I make the top smooth. Here you see Mike doing the keyway, that nice side to side motion. Takes a little while to get good at finishing concrete, putting in a keyway, knowing how to apply the pressure, and knowing how when to do it. If it's too wet, the keyway will not depress down into the footing. If it's too hard, you just won't be able to easily cut it with a 2x. You can see how well we all work together as well. We've been working together for years now, and Joe's been with us for over a year's time, and you can see he's just a team player. He doesn't even have to be told to start covering up the footing where we've done it, so he's just covering that over so that we can get the heater back on as quickly as possible, so that this footing stands a chance of building up that heat so that it can start to cure and hydrate. So that's one thing that you really want to have in any business, is a good team. You want to have guys that learn, that are coming to work to learn what you have to teach them, what other guys have to teach us. You want to have a good environment where everyone's happy to be going to work, everyone has goals that they're setting, and everyone just seamlessly works well together. And here you can see that we're doing that. I don't even have to tell Mike to put this keyway in. He automatically knows that's what we're doing because that's what's on the drawings, and he's just following after me, and Joe's following after him. This is just, we're working synergistically together, if you will. So for those of you that are wondering, this footing was poured on a Thursday afternoon. It will be heated until Monday, continuously heated. The diesel heater will be topped up. It's running on a thermostat so that the footing is above 10 degrees Celsius at all times. You'll see once we get the entire thing tarped here that the heat is going right to the back wall from just in front of the pump truck there. You can see the heat lines coming down, and this will have continuous heat throughout the project until it is backfilled, so that we have a very good product at the end of the day. So just through past experience with using Gaia Tech sensors that I've placed in the concrete before, I've built up a database that allows me to understand what our procedures that we've put into place are doing, how well they're working, and what our estimated final strength is for our concrete. And that was determined over a lengthy period of time, with also doing core samples and crushing those core samples and verifying that against on-site conditions as well. So we are very confident in the work that we're doing through the winter, and I would hope that most people that are building in the winter are taking on all of these same precautions, because this is what the code book tells us to do. You can see Joe's just putting rocks on the tarp. Doesn't take much to hold down these tarps in an excavation. The wind will usually just blow over top of the hole and doesn't really get down in there and lift anything up once the snow and rocks are all on it. But sometimes you really do have to worry about these tarps being held down. So we'll either put big planks down on them, 2x6 planks, or sometimes what works really well is also rebar lengths. 20-foot lengths of rebar will really hold down that those tarps quite well, so that you can hold that heat in there, right? Because you're paying for the diesel to create the heat. You don't want it to just completely get wasted. Although there's no stopping it, it's not going to stay under these tarps, but you can mitigate that losses there. Now Mike and I are just finishing up here on the last 10 feet or so of this footing. So we're going to start setting up the heater. The pump truck is putting away his outriggers. This pump truck is a company that I rent from almost exclusively for the overhead boom. The company is Redneck Concrete Forming, probably one of the best names in all of construction. One bit of advice I would give you when you're working with these tarps in the winter is that you want to be overlapping those tarps substantially, at least 1 foot or more. You want overlap over top of each other, and you want this to be going past your footing by at least a foot or more, whatever you can get. That's going to trap more of that heat in the soil and help so that if you do run out of fuel in your heater, that the heat that's in the ground will continue to radiate and keep that footing warm over time. That's taking advantage of the thermal mass that's there. Another word of advice when you're working with these tarps is to be very careful, very cautious. As you can see, we have all of these form stakes sticking up out of the ground, which are into hard ground. You don't want to be slipping on these. We technically should have rebar caps on all of these, but we are paid professionals, and it hasn't happened yet, and I hope that it never does. But basically, you want to be very cautious when you're walking on these. If any of you are still with me to this point in the video, I'd like to thank you for watching this real-time footing pour in the winter. I'd like to encourage you to like, share, and subscribe. Send this to any of your friends that might be into concrete, that might be doing a project for themselves or might be contracting their own project in the winter. These are all things that your concrete guy, your contractors should be doing for you to ensure the lifetime of your build. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope that you can join us back here again next week for when we do the layout. We're going to start setting panels, and hopefully we will also pour the wall next week as well. So there will be a lot more content with this stuff related. We'll be able to show you how to do the layout from a very simple standpoint of string lines, chalk lines, measuring tapes, all of that type of thing. And then we'll also be able to do a layout with more advanced tools as well, such as lasers. I have the Stabilo laser, Hilti laser, and we were fortunate enough to have surveying options as well. So as we move forward in this endeavor of creating this channel, creating this YouTube channel, I'd encourage you to ask questions. If you have any, please put them down there in the comments so that we can create a dialogue, so that I can learn and I can continue to be pointed in the direction of what people are questioning, where they want to learn. I am trying to tell myself that I don't believe in competition necessarily. I believe that there is enough work out there for all of us. I believe that we can all prosper in this environment, and I would hope that through sharing what I know and my experience, that we can get better products for everyone so that everyone can have nice things, that we can all make a good living wage. And I would like to say thank you for watching. Here you can see the tarps are inflated. This is where the end of the ducts are pushing out that forced air, and you can see me pressing it down as I walk, and that that heat's getting there, right? So that is all just helping that concrete go hard. So on Monday when we go to strip, I'll show you. It'll all be white. It'll all be good to go, and yeah, it's quite impressive that we have all of this technology and we have the ability to use it, and that people are willing to pay to have these things done. Some people have more money than time, and they need to have these projects done so that they can enjoy them in the summer. And I'm just eternally blessed, and I'm grateful that people are willing to continue these small projects or large projects through the winter. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you back here next week.